You're good, Lisa? All right, I want to welcome everyone to our Board of Education this evening. We'll open the meeting up. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll open the meeting up to public comment. And again, public comment on the front end is for agenda items only. On the back end, you can ask any general questions you would like. So we'll keep public comment open for a little bit, and then we'll go into our meeting.
You just stand. Yes, go ahead. I don't know if you want to be on the beginning.
State your name and.
My name is Eric Gosler. Some of you may have known me, most of you probably don't. Last season I was a modified football coach, and I just heard a bunch of confusion going on with the last couple months, and I was wondering if I still had a spot on modified or if I would be able to go as a volunteer coach for varsity. I was just curious about the whole
Conversation should go to Frank.
Have you placed a call to Mr. Alfonso, Mr. Gosler?
I have, and I've spoken to Sloppage as well.
Okay.
He's offered a volunteer spot. I just wasn't sure if I had to come to you guys at all.
That has not made it to us at this point. So I would start with the athletic department, and then if that's the case, that could be on,
like
especially if it's a volunteer, it could
like
be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. We have our special presentation this evening, our proposed budget. Desmond might have some updates for us.
Just a few. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I apologize for not getting you the presentation on Friday. I have been working with the numbers up to the very last minute, so I will go through the slides, but you do have a printout in front of you. Tonight we'll review the revenue sources. We have some revised estimates to our revenue sources. We'll go over the 26-27 draft expenses. We'll talk about the shortfall. We'll talk about our reserve proposal. There's more of a discussion that we'd like to put on the table. And then finally, due dates. Once again, this is, as I've shown before, we are in step 3 of the five-step process in the budget development. We're going to start off tonight with our revenues. As you can see on the screen, we're starting off with the state aid. State aid has not changed since the governor's run on January 20th. Just want to put out there that our foundation aid has been increasing by 1% over each year. The other revenues, these revenues, the BOCES, high cost, excess cost, these are all considered to be expense-based aids. And these are contingent upon the expenditures that we have. Once again, this slide is just showing that since January 20th to now, there has been no change in the foundation aid. However, we're going to move to other revenue sources. You'll notice that we've added in an additional $520,000. Now, I would like to say I was tasked with the process of finding revenue or looking for other revenue sources when I came on board. One of the things that we've been doing, we took a deeper dive into our other revenue sources, such as the interest we gain from the amount of money we keep in the bank. We've been running $225,000 in our budget. We've been very conservative. The trends show that it's been about $600,000. I decided to increase the budget by another $225,000, bringing that to about $400,000 that we would believe to receive in interest on the revenue that we get. In addition, we looked at other sources of revenue that we've received over the years, displaced students, tuition reimbursements for some of the homeless students that we've had. We looked at that revenue that came in, and I was being conservative and added that to the pot. In addition, which we added, was another $35,000 for E-rate reimbursement, which I would like to, Rich is not here, but he added that basically when we're looking at E-rate reimbursement. And finally, we added some prior year revenue, just looking at some of the items that we have from the prior year. Now, you don't have that detail for this presentation, but I can always give you that information, as I've said before. The biggest issue was that $404,000 in other revenue sources, which is primarily made up of the interest that we felt we were going to get over the years. As I said, we were conservative. We're not sure how the economy is going to go. Interest rates are kind of dropping. So I felt 400 was being kind of right in the middle. The last thing on the screen is you'll notice there's a reserves for 116,000. I know we're concerned about when we touch our reserves, but this is actually a legal case that we agreed to last year, and we've budgeted the money accordingly to come out of the tax cert line. This is, I need to pay for this. I'm using that as a reserve. So this is really just kind of a wash. It's in my expenses. It's also in the revenue. So it's in and out, but it does add to the bottom line. Questions? Okay. So we'll now move on to the expense side. On the expense side, we once again took a deep dive into the salaries and all the different expenditures that we have. As you can see on the screen, salaries increased by $836,729. Also, benefits increased by $222,740. These lines are increasing. Basically, we looked at the trends for the last 3 years, looked at what we paid for salaries. I've taken into consideration contractual agreement and salaries. We looked at different increases that we have to have for the teachers and admin and for the support service staff. We added that in, and that was probably about a 4% growth. We then looked at some of the benefits. Our benefits include all of our health benefits, which is CHP, NICER, MVP. They've all increased. However, there is good news in there. In that line, we include the TRS and ERS. TRS is actually going down in the rate that they're charging. They were actually at last year, well, for this year it's 9.59, and they're projecting that it should go down to 8.25. So there is a little bit of savings in there. So yes, I bumped up health benefit costs, which we all know are going up, but the TRS rate kind of went down, but it still gave us an increase in the benefits line. BOCES has been my struggle. We've looked at BOCES. BOCES has increased by approximately 12%. It's a lot of things going on in there. Lots of things that we're looking at. We are still trying to finalize the BOCES bill. We're going through the line by line to make sure that some of the services that we want to receive, and challenging some of the numbers. Yes.
Is that increase in the expense solely to program services? Does it have anything to do with their capital project that they're moving forward?
It's not their capital project. It's solely the services that are being provided. But we're also challenging some of the things that we saw on their recommendation. We've got some expenses that went up 25, 50%. And we're saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to us. And so we're looking at those saying, why did it double in nature? What's the reason? And
Do we know the number of students last year to this year?
No, I don't have the top of my head, but I can give you that answer.
I would like to know.
I don't know the exact off the top of my head, but it's similar, but the cost of the programs is rising as well.
That's a considerable cost of the programs, and as we interface with
And the struggle that we have with that is
Shanker.
the struggle that we have with that BOCES line is the money that we put out towards BOCES, we get back in the following year in aid. So you want to purchase things through BOCES, but when the rate is so high, you're wondering how much of that is actually coming back to us in a benefit for the following year. So yeah, we are struggling with that line.
Desmond, take a step backwards to benefits. What is ERS doing this year?
ERS is going up to, I believe, 17%. They were at 16 and change. I think they're going up to 17, and TRS went down.
Right.
So you get a yin yang, a swing. You go up here, but you're coming down here, but it's still going up overall.
Show the conference call.
We can move on to contractual. We analyzed all the contractual lines. That increased by 179,000. We basically went to the departments, I went to the buildings, and I asked them to give me their wish list. And then, just like the Scrooge I am, I cut it. But I gave them some increase that they needed. We added more textbook lines, we added some more, or other lines that need to be increased, and we had discussions. But eventually, what they wished for, we had to reduce a little bit. Once again, we move on. We got student services. There's increase is primarily due to tuition rates and other students. We've got more services that are being asked for, being provided. And finally, equipment went up by 154. That is kind of a good thing because Rich and I are trying to look at maximizing our aid. The more we spend on textbooks and equipment, we can get like a 1-to-1 aid ratio back with that. With the exception of equipment, it's kind of factoring our water ratio. So I have to spend a little bit more to maximize that aid. Either way, these are our expenses. Any questions? Okay. So these are just the highlight of the items that are the biggest drivers in our budget. Once again, salaries, followed by BOCES, then benefits, and then contractual, bringing us to about a $2 million increase. We then move on to the shortfall. So, simply put, we have $58,582,759 in revenue. We have $59,550,750 with a current budget shortfall of $667,991. The reason why I said I presented this later on without giving you on last week, this number was a lot higher than before, and in the past I presented a very large number and then we had a larger discussion. This is about as close as I can get it while still sleeping at night. 667,991 is our current budget shortfall. Now, how do we reduce that shortfall? We've gone through this slide before. We can, once again, reduce some of the supplies and equipment. We can cut positions, which that's not one of the things I want to do, but it's on the table. Legislative aid increase. We are waiting for the legislative budget to come out in April. We all know that that's going to be late, but we do see that sometimes we get a little bit more revenue that can offset our deficit. It's not a promise, but something that you look forward to. And that's going to happen in April. By the next board meeting, I would say in April, by that late April, we should have maybe some numbers or some idea, and that may help our deficit shortfall. The other one is to allocate reserves. I know I'll move on, hesitant about that, and then allocation of fund balance. These are just some of the recommendations of how we can do that. Once again, I think we've scrubbed as much as the revenue as I possibly can find without being a little bit too aggressive. And I think we've cut as much of the expenses. If we really start cutting expenses, we don't have a little bit of wiggle room, which every school budget needs. Things pop up, things happen. You need a little bit of, I like to use the word fat. We're starting to get a little bit thin here. And so this is a number that we need to work for.
As been last year, I think we started out like $900,000 in fund balance to apply, and then we went up to a little over $1 million. Is that correct?
We allocated 1.1, which is a standard number, but then we used some of the reserves. We used about $450,000 of the reserves, and we used some of that from tax cert, and we also used part of the TRS.
Right. Okay.
We can use those again, but once again, the other thing we should mention is we're still looking at this year's numbers. We haven't finalized this year's numbers. By Friday, I have told everybody we'll stop spending so that they're going to get their purchase orders in. Since they're not here, by Friday, they'll cut off the POs. That will give me an idea of where we stand with our current budget, how much savings we have, and can that savings be applied or used to help this current budget? Yes?
When you say allocate fund balance, does that mean allocate beyond the 1.1 that we normally allocate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Once again, we've had discussions. I know that we don't want to do that. We want to find as many ways as possible to reduce that deficit. Once again, it's either using reserves, using fund balance, or cutting into that little bit of fat that we have left. Still going to bring it down, not tremendously, but it's still going to be a decent sized number. I still want to point out, we still haven't closed this year. this year, if we do have a decent fund balance, that fund balance or that can be used maybe to offset this.
You don't have a projection for fund balance?
I never do that until I see what numbers have come in yet.
Is the increase in energy gonna affect, definitely gonna affect that?
Yes. Well,
We still gotta run buses and
still run buses.
heat buildings for the next
Are there
3 or
any
4 months.
any positions that have been unfilled for 16 months or more?
In terms of
I wouldn't expect you to know that, but I'm just curious.
Some custodial,
custodial.
they've been ebbing and flowing, but
bus drivers,
And bus
and bus drivers,
Yeah, we don't touch those.
you
Yeah.
can't. It's
Okay.
that brings us to the question or of a discussion about the proposition that we'd have to put forth in terms of reserves. We could establish, and I remember at the last presentation that Chris did, our fiscal advisor, he talked about looking at other reserves like a transportation reserve. We could create a repair reserve that the board would have to approve. The issue with this is, I would have to, and I'm going to present to you all the information that the reserve would have. I can give you documentation of what reserves you currently have, what reserves are out there, and what NYSED considers to be valid reserves. The repair reserve would be one that we should probably look at if we want to go do that going forward. We'd have to establish that for the next board meeting.
In a snapshot, Desmond, how does the repair reserve differ from our building capital reserve?
Your building capital reserve has already been established. It is for 10 years and it has a $10 million cap. There are some similarities between the two of them. You do need voter approval. However, you can use the funds differently. You can use them specifically for repair needs.
That's the difference,
That's the difference. If there is an emergency and you define your emergency whichever way you want to, those funds can be used for that particular emergency. The funds can also, in that reserve, can be moved if we do not use them into the capital reserve line if we should ever go down the road and we want to increase the capital reserve.
So that reserve, if there is such like an emergency or something similar to that where we'd have to spend money out of that reserve, we don't have to go to a design professional and have SED approval on it?
These are just emergencies. These are just reserves. These are not going
So that's a
the whole
little
design.
different than a
Just by the
capital reserve.
nature of it, a repair reserve you're gonna wanna use right away, do you have to do voter approval or was it board approval?
It's voter approval.
Okay, so
voter approval to establish.
Voter approval to
to
establish.
establish, but to
Not
use the
expense.
funds,
I believe there is the language that I'm looking at that would say, is it voter approval to use the funds also? You have to actually, it's not voter approval, you just have to have notification to the community. So if we're at a board meeting, like we are currently, and we wanted to use the reserves, we are publicly letting the public know that we plan on using that. That is public
Right.
notification. They don't have to vote on.
so
how we
voter
do it.
approval to actually
Establish.
establish the reserve. Now, for
Probably
example,
not
we
to.
just had the issues back here at the high school. If we had a reserve established and we wanted to use funds out of that, notification could come through the board meeting.
Come to the board meeting, to the public that we're going to
Right.
use those funds accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Once again, it's a small window because the next board meeting, this proposition will have to be approved. Because we're looking at the calendar 45 days before the budget vote. That's kind of the guidelines we have to have.
I'm absolutely in favor of this. I guess my only question is obviously with how we're talking about funding right now,
Mhm.
we don't have an obligation to put anything into it, or
You-
do we the
No,
first
you
year?
don't. You can set the limit of what you want it to be. I'm gonna make an arbitrary number, 500,000. But you don't have to fund that right away. You can fund that over time. You can fund that 10,000, 15,000 until you get to that limit. But once again, you're just funding it when you have reserves that are accordingly.
And if you say we set it for 500,000 and we don't fund it, there's no obligation to
There's
fund
no
it. It's just a
obligation.
maximum amount
Right.
that you can fund it to.
There's nothing that would say, okay, Desmond, you didn't fund it,
Right. Okay.
ta-da.
Thank you.
I'm just, devil's advocate. What is the potential for abuse, and what are the limitations, the guardrails? I mean, you mentioned it could be shifted over, but I would like to know.
So
There's zero chance of abuse.
Abuse,
What
yeah.
does that mean?
Well, I'm saying, whatever's not used, we said we could transfer into the major capital fund, but at what point is
I
that?
would argue that as a school with 3 full buildings, there's gonna be need for repairs.
I would agree, but I want to be fully informed
Yeah.
before, you know.
So, once again, we're gonna present to you all the information about reserves from the NYSED. Star has given us a small blurb too. I'll give you all the information about reserves. To answer your question, the guardrails are myself and the board. We will be the guardrails to say, what do we constitute as that emergency? Is it just repair and maintenance that should be part of the O&M? Or is it really an emergency like the water main break?
No, if you're going to stay here for the next 10 years, I'd be completely fine with that.
Of course, yes. But the whole point is, once you set the timeline up, you're just establishing that. If you see that 3 years, 4 years out, that nothing has happened, and you're looking at a capital project that we've talked about that we may have to do, you can then move some of that money into the capital. It doesn't have to go to capital reserves. It can go to any one of the other reserves. So you can spread it out accordingly if you don't, you want it to go someplace else.
Now, having played devil's advocate, I do want to agree with Heather that given like what happened with the water line here at the high school and the unexpected, it's always nice to have a reserve like that.
Yes. I like to think of it as just you always need a reserve even in your
Emergency repairs
Emergency
are usually
repair.
twice as much as planned repairs.
Correct.
Yep.
But
Is that repaired now?
Yes.
yes,
So you'll give us all that information.
yes. Everything in terms of reserves, what we want to do, a threshold. I'll give you some recommendations on what the board wants. We should have that either by Thursday or Friday.
And then we'll have to get back to you, because we'll have to get it on the agenda for next meeting,
For the
right?
24th, yes. So we've got about 2 weeks, calendar-wise.
So I can put it in my Friday update and then,
We're also gonna have a bus proposition.
At this point in time, we are not going to have a bus proposition. We had the last bus proposition. We looked at all the possibilities. We went through the analysis. We just received the 5 buses. I still believe that we are working with NYSERDA to kind of finalize our requirement for the state. And I think from that analysis, we can then determine what we would need to do going forward. But at this point in time, I'm not putting forth a bus referendum.
I'm okay with that as long as, once we get the report back from the consultants and everything, and we get a timeline from New York State on when we're going to electrified buses. I don't want to get into a situation where next year you're going to come to us and say, we need 12 buses.
Right. And
You know, I'm good not putting the bus proposition as long as all that research is done that next year will be a major bus proposition.
agreed upon. And with the last presentation and the last bus purchases, we believed that we could go out to 30. We said that we had enough buses in the fleet, even with some getting older. We had enough to support us past this year, past next year, and kind of going out a little further. But we want to still look at what are the requirements and what do we need in order to get the electric buses in here. We still have enough to transport our students.
Wasn't there a timeline for the last time we can purchase?
2027.
So this is our last opportunity to purchase any buses before having to purchase the electric ones, regardless of what that waiver is, right?
Right.
So the
Correct.
waiver is just for,
The waiver will give us another year.
Another year.
Yeah, so we can,
okay, so the waiver gives you another year of
and
purchase.
that's
Correct.
what Al said,
Okay.
we're having that
And
assessment.
then you gotta apply again for another waiver.
Thank you.
Depending on how things go.
Yeah.
So, we kind of come to the end of the calendar. We start looking at what's happening for the next upcoming board meetings, the 24th. I will give you the revised expense and revenues if anything is majorly changed. I'll give you the recommendations for the shortfall, what I believe we can use, reserves, or if I've cut other expenditures. And then we'll have the reserve proposition put forth. April 7th is the board meeting, we're at workshop, that's the actual meeting to go through there, and then by the 21st, we have the adoption of the budget and the adoption of the tax report card. And as always, this is my budget calendar, we have my favorite smiling students. At that point, I think there's nothing else. If there's any questions, I will say thank you.
Any questions?
Looking good, Desmond, thank you.
I just want to thank publicly Desmond and his office for the amount of time and effort they've put in this last couple of weeks to try to bring these numbers together. This has not been an easy process, but one that we are trying very hard, one, not to hit the community with too big of an increase, but also to keep our programs where they're at and hopefully move them forward with additional things in the future. But right now, that 667 is pretty tight as that office can make it right now. So
It's not a bad number.
it's not terrible. It's been worse.
We've
But
bridged bigger gaps.
This still brings that unsettled feeling in your stomach for the next month. Like, how are we going to make up that 667? And hopefully the legislature comes through. But as we know, we can't always guarantee that the legislature is going to do that. So we are going to try very hard to not have any positions eliminated, because those positions are all impacting for students, and we know what that did the last time. So,
Thank you all.
all right.
Right, Desmond, one quick question that doesn't have to do with our budget. Maybe we can look into it and see if it's real. I read an article that iPark 87 owes back taxes of over $5 million.
Okay.
It is not the portion that BOCES is part of.
Okay.
That's already been answered
Okay.
for
good.
us. Now, that was answered a couple of months back.
But is
We
it
were
the same
told
developer?
I don't know that answer, but it's the other side of the street. It's at the other side of the bridge.
Okay. I just don't, it's the
Yep.
same developer. It could migrate into.
I heard the facility's coming along amazing.
Yeah.
It's going to have some beautiful programs in it, but still has ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, the next time they have an open house, I encourage the board to take a
Yeah,
trip
right
up,
up.
because it is a beautiful site. It hasn't come with 100% readiness, but they're working very hard to try to not impact students as best as they can. Students have been impacted, though. It has not been as smooth as we would have wanted.
Just back to the budget, just want to bring up, because I think it was last meeting or maybe 2 meetings ago, we have Bernie Donegan's office in, right, giving us kind of a 5-year outlook. And just to go back to that, because I think that day we talked about how it didn't look like we were going to be in the red for another 5 years. This is what we face every single year, right? Regardless of what those projections show, when you dig down, it does end up where we do have to look into what can we do to make this budget work. So just want to point that out, because I know, last meeting it sounded like it was really good, and it is. We are not in a
It's much
terrible
better than
position.
anticipated
Correct.
a year ago, yes.
But at the same time, every budget season, or I should say almost, we are challenged to try to figure out some portion of that budget.
Yeah.
So just want to point that out, just for anybody listening or.
I'll take it.
Okay. Again, thank you, Desmond. We'll go into our consent items, EA 1 to C.3. Again, as usual, if you want to pull something out, need further discussion, clarification, we can do that. Just one, go back to a clarification. I know we had a little discussion going on earlier before we started the meeting. Probably part of my fault. I thought when you go to JV baseball head coach, I thought it was supposed to be a modified position. Am I wrong? It is definitely a JV baseball head coach. It wasn't on your agenda over the weekend. It's a walk-in today. So they just finalized that, I believe today or yesterday. So it's on there for tonight. And everything else is the same. So if you have any questions, concerns, any clarification, shout it out. Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to
Motion by
approve.
Mike, second by Heather. Any discussion? All good?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carries.
Okay, so just like to point out that we do have a retirement effective September 4th, so we would like to publicly thank Stephanie Santagata Wells for 30 years of service as of September 4th. Stephanie will be with us hopefully at the retirement recognition ceremony in the beginning of June. So that's something new this month. And also in the audience this evening, we have Jessica Hayes. She will be filling in as a special education teacher as a leave replacement for a teacher at the elementary school. So congratulations to Jessica.
Welcome aboard. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. Going to our student rep, Logan, you're up.
We got a few things today, but the Student Voice Club at the elementary school ran a donation drive to support the Ulster County SPCA, collecting pet beds, toys, leashes, and gift cards to Petco, PetSmart, or Tractor Supply. Donations were collected February 20th. And then at the middle school, during the school day on February 20th, the events committee at the middle school hosted a winter pep rally to highlight and cheer on our winter student athletes and celebrate the success they've had this season. And later that night, the second co-rec dance was held at the middle school cafeteria. And then finally at the high school, on January 30th, high school students from a variety of clubs and sports participated in an extracurricular fair for middle school students. This event was part of Hope Williams' Citizenship in Action project and focused on increasing underclassmen involvement in high school activities by introducing future high schoolers to the wide range of opportunities available. The event helped spark interest and excitement and was a big success. And then last Friday, the girls' varsity basketball team beat Red Hook in the Section 9 Class B championship game. And yesterday, JV and varsity spring sports started. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Logan? Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Boyd.
So each year we do a panorama survey. So that went out to families last week with a message from Mr. Freer. Postcards went out with a QR code for easy access for families to complete the survey. And then our staff and students will be completing their portions over the next few weeks prior to spring break. We completed our targeted monitoring review about a week and a half ago. We'll be meeting again with our state representative at the end of April to review and determine if there are any next steps. On February 13th, we had our half day of professional development at the elementary school. We had some sessions on data, mindfulness, gap analysis, and I did a presentation on the Portrait of a Graduate. At the middle school, we had sessions on co-teaching, station teaching, and I also presented Portrait of a Graduate at the middle school as well. And then at the high school, we had some sessions on looking at at-risk students and developing support plans, reviewing mid-year data, and a session on co-teaching. At a district level, we had our safety teams meeting with an AED and CPR update based on some of the DESH's law stuff that we just put into our safety plans. This afternoon, I was able to provide the high school with their updated presentation on Portrait of a Graduate since I wasn't able to fit it in on the conference day. And lastly, as of today, we are at 88 packets out for incoming kindergarten class.
Okay, any questions for Dr. Boyd? Thank you, sir.
Okay, so first order of business, just if anyone was attending the UXPA meeting this Thursday, that has been canceled. So I want to make sure that no one shows up there because that meeting's not taking place. And then my regular report, last week, Patrick and I attended the NISCUS conference in Albany. We attended sessions on the electrification of buses and the waiver. New York Inspires, the graduation measures that are currently on the table. They will be looking at redefining the credits at the high school level. We attended state aid discussions, pre-K aid discussions, the use of AI for staff, students, and administration. There was a session on the new APPR plan, which we need to have in place by 2031. So that was looked at. I attended a session on negotiations, and then interestingly, best practices of capital improvement projects. So I was not part of the presentation there, but I would like to say that we did some fine work with our capital improvement project because some of the things that I saw were like old hat to some of the ways that we've gotten our information out there. So hats off to our district for all the work that went into that last capital project. So I wish I would have been invited to present some of the things, but I did add some insight at the session. Just so that you're aware, our waiver for the bus electrification is being worked on now. That electrification study should be, it's progressing well is what I'm told, and we are in good shape for that application to be in according to the deadline through the electrification study vendor through NYSERDA. Sorry. So that's looking like it's moving forward very well. Our safety audit that we talked about a couple of board meetings ago is well underway. All buildings have been visited by the first round, and they are setting up second rounds and starting next week. The board should have a report by late spring, probably closer to June. I'm hoping before that, but we're just one of the many districts they're doing this for, but we should have something for the board's eyes by the time the school year is over with, which is exciting. Again, you already mentioned it, but congratulations to our girls on their win over Red Hook last Friday. I don't know what the score is as of right now. They were against Tappan Zee. Do we know the final score?
Logan,
Do you know it?
I don't remember the exact score, but they lost. The difference was 41 points.
Okay. Well, they should be proud of all of their efforts. They did phenomenal. So. And then last evening was the first of our two music scholarship concerts. I'm told by Mr. Opitz this morning that we raised a little over $2,000 last night, so we're hoping that it's just as fruitful tomorrow evening. Last night was the choral. Tomorrow night is the instrumental. That starts at 6 p.m., so please come out and join us. This is the one that's in the round in the gym where all the students get to hear, and it's really great to see the elementary. As again, the elementary guy in the room, it's always good to see the elementary kids taking a look around the room and hearing how wonderful the groups are that they're going to be part of in the future. So that's a great concert not to be missed. Spring parent-teacher conferences were held last week and the week before, and those have concluded. And then the one that everyone's waiting for is our emergency days. So we have used up our allotment of emergency snow days in our 25-26 calendar. We have applied for 2 waivers for the states of emergency. There was one back in January and one in February. I am told by colleagues in the county that have already gotten word that theirs have been approved. They will be approved if we need additional days. So they're not just going to come out and say they're approved. You're going to take the day and they're going to approve it at that point, because they will only approve it if you need it. They will not add days back to the calendar through the state of emergency process. So we're in good shape. There's 2 days there that we could work with if we absolutely need them. Let's hope we don't, because the last thing any of us want to do in the district is go remote. We will if we have to, and teachers have been working very hard to make sure they're ready if we ever got to that point. But by the looks of the weather that we had the last 2 days, I'm hoping the tides have shifted. But we've been wrong. We've had snowstorms on April 4th before, so let's hope that continues. April 4th is during spring break, though, so it can snow that day. That's fine. And that's all that I have.
Any questions for the superintendent?
Just curious, at the conference that you were at, when they were talking about electrification of buses, what was the...
We're not the only ones applying for the waiver. And the lobby day that, I failed to mention this, the lobby day, which was going to be on Tuesday, was the day of the storm. So many of us, I opted to vacate town to get back home before the storm that day. And of course, in retrospect, I could have stayed up there because it didn't turn out to be as bad as was predicted. So for the folks out there listening, Ben Knoll is not always 100% correct. But I will tell you, all of Albany was abuzz that Ben Knoll says is going to happen. So we all thought we had to leave. But anyway, as far as the electrification, folks were going to see legislators that afternoon. So there was a whole contingent of folks that were going to go across to lobby against, or at least get that waiver in place. I don't think anyone is 100% against the concept. Of course, we would like to move in that direction where clean energy is something that we all want to look at, but we want to do it in a responsible way that it's going to not impact our school budgets, but also not going to, and I hate to say this, put anyone in harm's way. Some of those vehicles, we've seen some tricky stories about, you know, some of those vehicles on the road. So let's hope that the waiver goes through, which I think it will, and it gives them a little bit more time to work through some of those issues.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you. Under Board of Education, new business, Highland Central School District School Board candidates nominating petitions for nominating candidates for the office of the Board of Education for Highland Central School District are available at the central office beginning March 10th between the hours of 8 a.m., 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, except for April 20th, which is at 5 p.m. The following vacancies, which expire on June 30th, 2026, are to be filled. Term of Alan Barone, term of Heather Welch. The term of office is for 3 years. In order to be considered as a candidate, the individual must be 18 years old, a registered voter in the Highland Central School District, and able to read and write. They must also have been a resident of the district continuously for 1 year prior to the election, May 19th, 2026. The completed petitions, which the signatures of 25 qualified district voters, must be filled with the clerk of the district no later than 5 p.m. on Monday, April 20th. Candidates must submit an email, see below, declaring their intent to run and to request a packet. Only the original petition is accepted and must be received by 5 p.m. on April 20th. Only original completed packets will be accepted. For any questions, you may contact the district office or Lisa Siniglia at lsiniglia@highland-k12.org or via phone at 845-691-1020, extension 3157. Okay, anybody have anything for new business?
I just wanted to bring up one thing, and I had emailed the administration as well. Back in the day, when I was in when I went to Highland, in 5th grade, we had the 5th graders, to be able to start that transition to middle school, would switch for certain classes, right? So I believe for me it was math and maybe ELA, or was it science? I can't remember.
I think it was math and English.
And wanted to really start the conversation to get thoughts on trying to get something in place to really help those students going from the elementary school to the middle school. Just in my own personal experience, I can say that I have 2 kids who have recently went through that transition, and for very different reasons, both of them would have benefited tremendously. I have talked with just other parents that I know in the surrounding areas. Most surrounding districts do have some form of either switching teachers, whatever the case may be. So just wanted to talk through, you know, what we can do to help our students help in that transition period. It is an interesting time, especially with, and I know we always say COVID, but my son was in kindergarten when COVID hit, and he just went up to the 6th grade. So you are seeing, I see those social challenges being a little bit different in the kids coming up. So I think it would be beneficial. Understood that there are some concerns, right, in terms of like, you know, building disruption and changing classes and where the 5th grade classes are in the building, or they're maybe not all in one area, so it may provide some disruption in that building, but I do think that there would be a ton of different benefits for our students.
It does take a realignment of staff, but
But as Heather mentioned, it was done in the past. It was.
I have children who did both. My older one switched for 5th grade, and my younger one, who's in middle school now, did not switch. So I see the pros and cons just in my own household.
And do you feel the one scenario is a pro, the switching, or kind of?
It's interesting because they're very different children. So to Heather's point, like there's various reasons why it supported one and may not support the other, and vice versa. But I'm in favor of looking at that, being that it's feasible, even if it's on a smaller scale. I want to say my older daughter, I think, switched for every subject, so she hit up all the teachers, whereas maybe doing one or two,
just to,
you know, again, I don't know what the logistics.
It'd be interesting to know why it was discontinued if it was so valuable.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I can answer that.
Oh.
Yep.
So it was discontinued when I was the elementary principal, and it was basically for safety.
Okay.
We had students that were traversing the building, and supervision couldn't be with them in the hallways while the teachers were in the classrooms. Discipline referrals went down exponentially because typically the unsupervised time is when things happened. I think I pointed out, I responded to Heather, she had written to me. The classes are on 2 different floors, so a lot of the behavioral issues happened in the stairwells. So we had some kids that were getting injured in there. So, and also it was just the amount of time. So when we went back to the cell phones, about the amount of time that we returned to students by not using cell phones, we returned time to teachers where they didn't have to pack the kids up so that they could leave to go to the next class to then get back. One of the other things, and a simple thing, is kids always seem to forget stuff in the other classroom, and then they had to go back. So they're interrupting the other classroom to get their stuff out of their desk. It cut down on kids playing with things in other people's desks that they were sitting in during the day. So it was a multitude of issues, but safety was really at the forefront. There were definitely some positives. I do think that we, New York State wants every kid to get a wide range, and the whole tracking started as early as 4th grade. When I first got there, they were switching for classes in 4th grade too, and we were ability grouping, and it made it a little bit more difficult with special education classes. They need to have inclusion rooms, so the special education teacher needed to move with certain groups of students. So there was a whole host of issues that went into that. But as I said to Heather, I know the team is willing to take a look at it again. And if it's not on a large scale, it might be for, I think I mentioned it in the email, maybe topic-based. I remember when I was in elementary school, there were 5 teachers at the 5th grade level, and they all specialized in a different area of science. And so for 6 to 8 weeks, we'd go to a different teacher, but it was the whole class that went. So it was, and then somebody would help transition them. It was difficult giving that middle school model in an elementary building, and the disruptions from you hear it from the third and fourth grade teachers, because that's the hallway that those kids were passing in.
Yeah.
They'd have to step out of their rooms, interrupting the 3rd and 4th grade lessons to have the kids quiet down so that, and unfortunately we don't have a lot of additional staff to help transition the kids from one part to the other. But again, that can all be looked at again. That was in that moment. And then that was also, if you remember back when teacher of record was very important in the APPR. So I think that's no longer the case, where your test scores are not tied to teachers any longer. But teachers were like, well, wait a minute, I want more time with my kids because my APPR is based on how well my kids are doing. And if I'm sending them somewhere else, then somebody else is doing the work, but it might be impacting my score. So a lot of those things went into play. That's gone. We're not using APPR scores like that any longer, because that was taken out of the legislation. So Ian is willing to meet with his teachers to start that conversation, and if it happens for this upcoming year, great.
It might be interesting to include somebody from the middle school who remembers the old time,
sure,
and see, so they can be part of that dialogue to see if they've seen a difference.
And I know,
sure.
When it went way back, you're probably talking maybe 15 years ago or 10, 15 years ago. I mean, our class sizes have gone down, so we do have smaller classes. And could it be explored where the teachers move, if it's only for maybe 2 subjects, where the teachers move, so those children are not out in the hallway. Maybe some of those 5th grade teachers will willing to do something like that.
If they're in classrooms that are like next to each other, the teacher could just walk across the hall. Then the student is staying with their own materials. Nobody's playing with their stuff. Nobody's, that was a big thing.
Yeah, I would suggest to Ian to explore all avenues and not just, I think it's,
so.
All right.
Good point.
Yep. Anything else for new business? I don't believe at this point we have any old business laying around. Ulster BOCES school calendar. That's out, right?
That's just for notification.
That's just for notification. Yeah. Unfortunately, that took a long time to get done. Right. So ours is done as well. but I have to go through certain contractual things to make sure that groups take a look at it and sign off on it before I can bring it to the board. So I'm hoping for the next meeting that we'll have ours solidified as well, because parents are looking for that already. It does look like superintendent's conference days will start before Labor Day this year, which we've done in the past, and that's really to build in some of those additional days so that we can still have 6 snow days moving into the future.
Okay. Just keep it on your radar. We'll discuss it at the next meeting. That April 7th meeting in the past, coming off of spring break, it's the day after. We're still waiting for a budget, which maybe will come in the first 2 weeks of April. Who knows? But possibly either moving that date or pushing it off entirely. We do have 2 in April. We have the 7th and we have the 21st. So just keep that on your radar when we get to our next meeting on March 24th. All right. Anybody have anything for the good and welfare of the district? I'll open the meeting back up to public comment for general items. Okay. Close public comment. I'll ask the board for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Jen, second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a